Hello, everyone.
Hello, welcome everybody. I hope you can hear us. And we're going to start this roundtable. So I welcome you all. Good that you're here. This roundtable is about sustainable supply chains through CSR risk management. And we will tell you all about this and show you how you can do this with some practical examples from two companies we invited. Caroline, can you show us the presentation and then we can start?
Yes.
So this roundtable, European roundtable, is about sustainable supply chains through CSR risk management. And the program, that's the next slide, yeah. We're first going to do a welcome and introduction. So we are going to say something about who we are. We are 4 of us speakers, and we also really want to know who you are. So we have a tool we're going to use so we can make it a bit interactive as we can't see you. So we're going to ask you some questions with a tool. Then we're going to talk about the goals of this roundtable. We have a couple of goals we want to achieve. We are going to say something about and tell you something about CSR risk management. So that's also called due diligence. So why you need it and how to do it. We have some steps we're going to discuss with you. I'm going to show a live demo of the CSR risk check. That's a tool you can use to do CSR risk management. And we're going to show that how you can use that. I'm going to say something about the CSR risks versus SDG impact. So when you tackle a CSR risk, how you can contribute to an SDG. I see a lot of hello in the chat, so that's really good to see where you're from and who is in this room. And the main part of this program is a panel discussion with Tony Chocolonely and Hakro. So we invited 2 companies to talk about how they do CSR risk management, and I think that will be a good way to discuss that, how you do it in practice. And then there's a question and answer round. Then you can, the floor is yours, and you can ask all your questions to the companies and to us about CSR risk management and how you do it, and if you need any more information. And we are going to end this roundtable with conclusions and next steps. So how you can implement this CSR risk management in your own company, for example, or in another way, how you can use this information for yourself. So that's the program of today. At first, some technicalities. As I said, we're going to use a tool to make it a bit more interactive. We're going to use Slido. I will tell you about that. So please have your mobile phone ready or open a new tab in your browser, and then you will see the question and we can make it a bit more interactive. You can also ask your questions in the chat. We will collect these questions at the end or the third part of our session and try to give an answer to all of your questions. So I'm just collecting the questions. And if you have technical issues, if you can't hear us or you have anything else that doesn't work, please let us know, and then a team member of CSR Europe will assist you. The next slide. Yeah, who we are. So I am Katinka. I'm from the Netherlands. I work at MVO Nederland. I will tell something about that organization later. I'm working in Team International, and my main project is the CSR risk check. I'm also going to tell something about that later, the tool. And I brought my colleague Caroline with me. She's also here.
Shall I say a few words about myself?
Yeah.
Yeah. My name is Carolina. I work for UPJ in Berlin, and we are working together with MVO, and they helped us human rights and business and human rights of the German government on the project CSR risk check, which Katinka is going to show you in a bit more detail. And I will present what UPJ does in Germany and internationally as well a bit later.
Yeah, thank you. And then we have Pavi from Tony Chocolonely. Can you tell us something about yourself?
Yes, hi. I'm Pavi from Tony Chocolonely, which is an impact company that makes chocolate. Our mission is together we'll make 100% slave-free the norm in chocolate. And we say we're crazy about chocolate and serious about people, and we take that very seriously.
Yeah, thank you. Later on that, you're going to tell something more about that. Anna from Hakro.
Hi, everyone. Great to see where you're all from. This is so exciting to be here. I'm Anna from Hakro. We have a product that is a little bit less sexy than chocolate, but it's also very important to look at risks in that context. I'm in corporate fashion. So Hakro is a leading German brand for corporate fashion and workwear. And yeah, I think for now that's it. We'll tell you a little bit more about that later as well.
Thank you. Okay, so that's us. And now we really want to know who is in this roundtable, who you are. So we're going to ask a first question with Slido. So I want you can join at slido.com in a browser or at your smartphone. And the code you have to enter is 53423. And then you can say what kind of organization do you work for? So is this an NGO, company, social business, self-employed, student, or maybe another? And I can see that one person can't see or hear anything. So maybe Ade, you can help her. Okay, good to see that the rest can hear and see us. So we have some answers already that are given. So 63% is company, and NGO is also here. We also have a student. I will just wait a bit to see if you all can give an answer. Other as well, you can say in the chat what other means, maybe government or something else. So I see there's a lot of companies, so that's good to know. I hope you will learn something about CSR risk management and how you can do it and apply it in your own company. And of course, also for the other ones, I hope you will learn and gain some new knowledge in this roundtable. So thank you. We already have 30 answers. It's good. Okay, so I think that is it. So mostly companies and also NGOs and NPOs. So welcome everybody. Okay, something about MVO Nederland. So I'm working for MVO Nederland. That's a Dutch organization. It's a network for businesses, and we have around 2,000 businesses that are part of our network. We all have one goal in our network, that we want to go to the new economy, and that means a future-proof economy. That means climate neutral, inclusive, circular, and build around fair supply chains. So that are our long-term goals we want to achieve, and especially the last one, fair supply chains. That is all about this theme, CSR risk management. So that is why we also do this. Then we have an international program. I'm working mainly on this part. We have some countries we are working in, for example, Ethiopia. We have a leather project in Ethiopia where we try to make the leather business a bit more sustainable, to use less chemicals, and also work on labor conditions in Ethiopia in that sector. There's also other sectors we're working in, such as textiles, but also agri-food, tourism, and a couple of projects and activities. As I said, some impact projects where we work on the SDGs in Ethiopia, for example, but also the CSR risk check, which is a tool I am going to explain, and that is my main project. So I will say something about that later. So that is our international program. The next slide. Yeah, so Caroline, can you say something about UPJ, the organization you are working for?
Yes, absolutely. So I work at UPJ. We are celebrating our 25th anniversary next year, and we are a network of committed companies and non-profit intermediary organizations in Germany. You can see all of our member companies. It's around 40 companies on the right. You can see their logos there. It's large multinational companies like BMW, BASF, DHL, but also smaller and medium-sized companies who are dealing with CSR risk management and sustainability and due diligence in supply chains as well, especially if they have larger customers. What we do is we focus on projects that contribute to solving social problems by creating new links between companies, non-profit organizations, and public administrations. So we're all about cooperation. And we also support all of these actors with information and advice in the development and implementation of their corporate citizenship and corporate social responsibility activities. Yeah, that was it about UPJ. I'm going to go into a little more detail about the goals of this roundtable. We want to get a more clear picture on what CSR risks actually are, then what CSR risk management is. So how, if you know what a CSR risk is, if you know what your personal actual CSR risks are, how do you manage those? How are the CSR risks linked to SDG impact, and how do you do CSR risk management by learning from other companies? So Tony Chocolonely and Hakro that we invited to speak. We're going to get more interactive again. So please have your mobile phone ready, our new tab open, and go to slido.com. I will tell you the code in a second, but I'll explain a bit about the questions first. So we want to know, how is your company working on sustainability internationally? So what we mean by that is, if you have international business ties, if you do business internationally, how do you deal with sustainability and CSR issues there? Is it something, and it's a free text question, so you can type in anything that you want. Do you try to work with your suppliers? Do you source sustainable materials? So anything that comes to mind, what do you do for more sustainability, to do business more sustainably on an international level? And then there's a multiple choice question. Where do you get information about CSR risks in your supply chain from? This is a multiple question answer where you can also give multiple answers, because there are many ways on how you can get to the information about CSR risks in your supply chain that you need. And here comes the code. So please type in, go to slido.com and type in the code 45433. I have to be quick. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's the right one. I hope the question is clear. If not, please let us know in the chat. Katinka, you can see the chat, right?
Yeah, I can see the chat, but I don't see any questions coming, so I hope it's working.
All right, two answers already.
Two answers, yeah.
Yeah, auditing suppliers, code of conduct for suppliers. Helping SMEs in the Netherlands with making their value chain more sustainable. Idea to set up cooperation projects with suppliers, which is one of the keys to good CSR risk management. Not structured, left business, certifications, support business on due diligence by means of information and qualifications, covenant in direct contact with suppliers, certifications, social audits. I love that you're so active. Sometimes it's a struggle to get people to answer. Sustainable procurement, sustainable packaging, overall sustainable brand strategy. Yeah, just beginning. Hope to have some insights locally and globally. Oh, blockchain technology. That's very interesting. Code of conduct and KPI. Yeah. Desk-based supplier assessments. Only working regionally, actually. It's also a way to escape the challenge. I don't mean it in a bad way. Sustainable procurement policy. WWF. Project, strategically at beginner stage, learning from consultants to private equity owners. So we have 22 answers. You can still keep and you can still send answers, but I'm going to go to the second one. So where do you get your information about CSR risks from in the supply chain? Audit report, desktop research. Looks like a very good mix. Actually, what do you think, Katinka?
Mm-hmm. It is.
Oh no, many people are using the CSR risk check. That's very
Good
nice to see. Yeah. Audit reports and exchange. That would, yeah. It's a very good way to detect the actual risks, I would say. Desktop research and the risk check there for potential risks, and the audit reports, they will give you actual risks. All right, I will continue sharing the presentation. Because you can see that you already do a lot. And this might be due to internal motivation, but there's also a relevance and urgency from outside factors. So you can see on the right hand side, you can see hard law and soft law initiatives all over Europe and Switzerland. So in Germany, for example, we have the Textile Alliance. There's a discussion about passing a due diligence law for companies larger than 500. In the Netherlands, there's a child labor law. I don't know what MHRDDWG is, Katinka. Maybe you can.
I don't know either. I don't know.
All right, it's probably
child labor
yeah.
is the main law we have,
Yeah.
but it's not implemented yet. But it's
Oh, all right.
new. Yeah.
Yeah, but you can see that all over Europe things are happening. Some laws have already been adopted, like in France, the droit de vigilance, for example, and also, I can see in the Netherlands it's the child labor law. There might be an upcoming law on a European level. This is also what the European Parliament is discussing at the moment. You have a consumer demand and also a business-to-business demand. So if you're a small and medium-sized company and you have large customers, you're very likely to be confronted with questionnaires, with that you have to register at a platform. If you are in the automobile industry, for example, you might know Drive Sustainability, which is an initiative from CSR Europe for OEMs. So consumer demand or client demand, customer demand, this is something that is very real, but this is all that comes from outside and might feel like a push, but this can also be a pull. So it also opens new opportunities for your company if you deal with this. It's also an overarching due diligence. If you prepare for potential laws that might come, and that your company will be prepared. And there is a war of talent, but there's also a war amongst good suppliers. And if you're a good company, if suppliers want to work with you, then you definitely have an advantage. So we have mentioned CSR risks many times up until this point. So what are CSR risks?
I have one question from the audience. So why Portugal is not referred? I think it's not because there's no law upcoming, but I don't know, Sonia, maybe you know more about this. And MHRDD is mandatory human rights due diligence. So that's also an upcoming law, but it's not there yet, but people are voting for it.
Okay. So what are CSR risks? The CSR risk is a risk within the value chain that can harm people, the planet, or the economy. And there are CSR risks regarding fair business practices, human rights and ethics, labor rights, environmental matters that can have a negative impact on business. We often talk about human rights due diligence, but environmental matters, they can't be separated from human rights, but always keep in mind that it covers the whole, it covers the 3P, people, planet, and sometimes also profit. Yeah. And Katinka will now tell you how to implement and build a robust CSR risk management.
Yes, thank you, Caroline. So CSR risk management or due diligence are based on 8 steps, and these are based on the OECD guidelines, which are based on the UNGPs, the UN Guiding Principles. I'm not going to talk about all 8 steps, but highlight 3 of them because we don't have, I think, enough time to do all of them. Caroline, can you? Yeah. Now I see the first. Can you make sure they all come into screen? Yeah, thanks. So first thing you have to do is actually map your supply chain, and some companies are really struggling to do this because all supply chains are international, really complicated and complex. They can be. For example, if you're trading in electronics, you might get them from China, but the raw materials are coming from maybe Africa, Congo, or somewhere else. So the first thing you have to know is your supply chain and find out where your products and raw materials are coming from. So really go into the whole supply chain and map that. That can be a struggle. So yeah, you really have to put time into to knowing where your products are coming from. The step 3 is identifying risks, and then you can use the CSR risk check, which I'm going to explain later or after this. The CSR risk check is a tool you can use to see what the potential risks are in a country for a specific sector. That doesn't mean that it is an actual risk for your business activity. It could be that you make use of a lot of certification, or you have a really good relationship with your suppliers, and you know what is happening in a specific area, and you already act upon that. So maybe that's not a risk for you. So you really have to do your own research, as we saw in the other questions, that people are using audits or are consulting stakeholders to identifying these risks and see if the potential risks are actual risk for your business activities. So once you have all these risks you research them, then you have to make a prioritization, and that can be a struggle if you have there is a lot of risks in a country. So for example, if you found out that child labor is a risk, but also, for example, deforestation, then you have to think about, where do I want to start? Where do I want to take action first? And there are many ways to do this. You can look at the severity of a risk or the likelihood, or both, but also use your own research. So consulting stakeholders, what is the most urgent problem in an area, and to find out where you can start taking action and mitigating the risk. And that is also step 5. The most important thing, I think, of CSR risk management is take action. And this can mean a lot of things. For SMEs, it means something else than for big companies. So, for example, for SMEs, collaborating with supply chain partners to address risks and work together in a sector. So, joining a sector initiative or supply chain initiative to work together to tackle a certain risk in your supply chain. It can also mean that you start a conversation with your supplier to ask questions. Where does the product come from? What is happening in an area? What are the labor conditions? What are the wages? And how can we make sure that it improves, for example? So it can mean a lot of things, and this is also the step that is linked to SDGs, because when you tackle a certain risk, there's a slide later on, I will explain more about that. If you tackle a risk, then you also have an impact on SDGs. The 3 other steps are also really important, that you, when you have a plan and a roadmap to do CSR risk management, you have to embed it in the whole company and integrate it in all business processes. And the other 2 also important, monitoring and communicating. It doesn't mean that you have to do these steps in order. You can also change them around. So when you have prioritized risks, you can already communicate about that, about what the risk, which risk you're going to tackle and how, for example. So it's not in this order. It doesn't have to be in this order. It's actually kind of a circle. You're doing it. It's a process, and you start over again if you to investigate if there are new risks, for example. That could also be the case. So that is a first introduction of CSR risk management. But later on, we will hear how the 2 companies are doing this in practice, and I hope that also will give an insight in how you can do it. Okay, the next slide. OECD. So the CSR risk check, that is a tool you can use for step 3 in CSR risk management. So identifying the risks. I'm going to show you how you can use it, and it's a starting point for your research into identifying the risks. So what you need to know first is your supply chain. You have to have mapped it already and know what country and product you want to investigate. This is our homepage. You go to start the check, and then you can fill out any product or country. We just use one example now, that is gold. You can also click on the list of products and choose one. So now we're just going to investigate what the risks are for gold or metal, and the country Congo for now, just to give you an example. So you fill out these 2, then you go, you can fill in your email address. It is optional, but you can make a user account and to make sure that everything you have checked, it's there, and you can view it again. So that is what you can do, but you don't have to. Then you click on show risks and advices. And then there are 2 ways of viewing the results. On the homepage, you can see the risks. So for example, fair business practices, there are 4. About corruption, for example, but I really would recommend to download the report, because then you have all the risks in one PDF and you can use it. And so this is the first page of it, and then you can view the content, the index, and see all the themes that Caroline just talked about. So it's not only about human rights, but also about environment. Let's see what is the case for biodiversity and deforestation. Maybe there is one risk there. So we not only give risks, but also advices what you can do about these risks. So there are risk and advices. And you can see that on the right of a risk, you can see if it's about a product or a country or both. So this first thing, it's really small. I hope you can see it better than I can. Yeah, that's better. Thanks. So this is about biodiversity, and it causes a lot of disturbance, and that's only about ores and metal scrap. And the other one below that is about Congo. Let's see if there's one specific one about a product and the country. Caroline, can you see if we can find one?
Yeah.
We have one question. What's the databases of this tool? That's a good question. We do our research ourselves. We base these risks upon online sources that are available for all of you. And we use, for example, Amnesty International, but other NGOs who do research in a specific area and for a specific sector in a specific country, but also news articles. And here you can also see US Department of State or Labor, I'm sorry, every year they produce a list of goods produced by child labor, and we update that every year to see what products have a risk of child labor, and that is the case for this example. So Congo, metal, scrap, and ores, there is a risk of child labor. And of course, this is a starting point for your company. So this is research that is online available, and after this, you have to find out if this is an actual risk for your business activity. So this is a starting point, and then you can do your own research and put them together.
Shall we go back to the presentation?
Yeah, there's one question. I think we will go back to that later. So I'm not going to answer that now, but later in the presentation. Yeah, so this is the tool. So it's based on online data sources, and you can just see for yourself and use the tool. Yeah, can you go back to the presentation? Oh, one question about the tool. How often do you update the database? So we are working on this on a daily basis. Our target is that we don't want sources that are older than 5 years. So if they're 5 years, we make sure that they're not older than 5 years. But we are doing this on a daily basis, and some sources we are updating every year. For example, the list of goods produced by child labor. So that is how we do that.
Can I add something, Katinka?
Yes, of course.
What you can see here, we get this question from Germany a lot. So maybe maybe this is something I'm very aware of.
Yeah.
So the risk check says that 29 risks have been identified. If you would like to compare different suppliers from different countries, and you go to China and textiles, and then you go to Romania and textiles, and China might have more risks identified than Romania. This is not because China is a riskier country, but this is because there are more sources for China and textiles. So the number of risks doesn't give any conclusion about how risky a country or product is. I think this is important to know, because some companies or some users of the risk check, they used to try to rank countries based on the risks that could be identified, but this isn't useful. So it's not a valid conclusion to say the risk check has identified X amount of risks more than another country or another product, and this is why this country is riskier or less risky.
Yes, thanks. We also have a question. How often do you recommend to update your risk assessment? Some experts say every quarter, which to me is very often. So this is about the steps of risk assessment. I don't have a fixed answer for this, but it is an ongoing process, and it is possible that new risks occur. So I would say do update it, but yeah, I don't have a fixed answer for how often you have to do it, but maybe every year. I don't know, Caroline, if you have something to add.
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's an ongoing process. This is also why the step in the CSR risk management roadmap is so important, to integrate CSR risk management in business processes that you already have. And I think our experts from the companies can also give us an answer regarding this in the panel discussion. I think annually is a good ballpark figure. If you would look at how a human rights impact assessment works, this can take a couple of years, to be honest. So Lidl, for example, the discount supermarket chain, they are in the process of doing this, and they have publicly communicated about this, that this is going to take them 2 years, and you can't do such big assessment every 2 years. This is not going to work. But as you said, Katinka, it's an ongoing process, and yeah, at least I would say at least once a year.
Yeah, thanks. There's one question from Nicola. Will we have the slides after the presentation? Yes, we will share them. And one question, how to manage risks and human rights due diligence in the conflict affected area where business is by default involved or contributing to ongoing systematic human rights violations? That's a really good question, and I think we have to discuss that as well in the panel discussion. So we will get back to that later. Okay, so something about SDG impact versus CSR risks. I already told a little bit about it, but we have some examples in this table. So for example, if you found out that child labor is a risk in a specific country where you trade with in the sector, for example, Congo and gold, if you tackle that risk by, for example, making child labor free zones, then you contribute to the SDG for quality education. So you make sure that children could get to school. So that is one example, and you see more crosses for child labor, and that means that the blue one is the SDG with the biggest link with the risk. But of course, you also contribute to no poverty and decent work and economic growth if you tackle child labor. Another example is health and safety at work. If you tackle a risk that regard this theme, then you contribute to SDG free good health and well-being. So these are a couple of examples, but there's also more information about this on our website. So the CSR risk check, and this is also a theme that the two companies will discuss as well. So I think that will be discussed in the panel discussion. Okay, so the next slide. Yeah, we're going to ask you a question again. So now we explained a bit more about CSR risk management and CSR risks. And we really want to know if you already started with CSR risk management, or if you maybe want to start, but you don't know how. What is your biggest challenge in CSR risk management? That could be one of the steps you're struggling with, or maybe you're struggling with starting. So explain why you are struggling. And maybe you don't struggle. And then the question 4 is good to answer for you. What has proven to work well in your organization regarding CSR risk management? So please let us know what really worked in your organization. And then we can share and learn from each other. So go to slido.com again and use the code 45435, and they are both open questions. So please put your answers and tick them in the browser. So the first question, what are your biggest challenges in CSR risk management? And this could concern some of the steps I just explained, or maybe other issues. And if you don't have started yet with doing this, then maybe you can explain if you struggle starting, that could also be the case. So I'm just going to give you some time to think about it and type in some answers. And if you're not working in a company, maybe you could think about what would be the biggest challenge. Getting full insight into the supply chain. Yeah, I can understand that. To really get an insight into the whole supply chain is really a struggle for a lot of companies. Overwhelming amount of risks. We hear that a lot. Getting the information. Okay, maybe you could think about the CSR risk check to get information, but there are also other tools and ways to research the risks. Support from top management. So that's more about integrating it into your whole company. It's interesting. Raw material traceability, industry challenge. Data, go beyond first tier level. Yeah. So I would also recommend to start with the first tier, but yeah, it is a struggle to get beyond that. Aligning all internal stakeholders, mapping full supply chain. Not reflecting enough on the current status. Oh, now it's gone. And not enough on the current status, as this is already going quite well. Okay. Resources. Yeah, that's a struggle of a lot of SMEs. So time and human resources to do all the research. Competence, personal resources, select a good methodology. Moving from the general risk to the specific risk. Regional, specific to a company or practice. Top management, again, understanding and support. So maybe we could discuss this later also in a panel discussion. So how do you get your top management along with you? Complexity.
Very interesting to see.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
Let me aligning purchasing department with CSR objectives. So that's also about embedding it into the company. Complexity of tiers, lack of collaboration. Yeah, data management equality. Okay, thank you for all the different answers and your active responses. I hope that we will give you some answers to this and that we help you to get a step further doing it. So to the next question, what has proven to work well in your organization regarding CSR risk management? So what is working in your organization? I'm really curious about this as well. And I hope we will get some answers. It could be that there are only challenges. I don't know. Inter-industry collaboration. So that is working well. Cooperation with different departments, entities. And due diligence in new product development with regards to CSR risks.
That's very interesting.
That's good. Yeah. Clear purchasing strategy. Oh, here as well, top management commitment. Okay.
It's a problem and a solution.
Yeah. Regular review. In our company's case, we have a quarterly review and it raises awareness. Okay, so that's about getting the whole company with you. Common platforms, sector collaborations, about working together. Yeah. Pressure from customers. That's interesting.
Also, third-party supplier audits according to code of conduct, and involve C-level managers from the start, CPO discussion group.
colleague engagement and top-level commitments. Oh, I'm really glad that there's also a lot of things that are working well in your organization, and that is not only a struggle. Raising awareness among internal stakeholders. Okay. Okay, I think we will go on. Thank you for your active responses. That's really nice. Okay, so now we're having had a lot of theoretical about CSR risk management and all the steps, and we now really want to know how you do it in practice, and that's the reason we invited two companies, Hakro and Tony Chocolonely, and I would welcome Anna first from Hakro to tell something about the company and also how you're working on this. So
thank you, Katinka.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's very exciting for me as well to see from our audience what points you are struggling with and what solutions you may have already found to tackling CSR risks. Because on my first slide, Caroline, if you can go to it, I've actually brought my top management, a big picture of my top management. Hakro is an SME, so a small and medium-sized company from southern Germany. And these two lovely people are our CEOs, and I'm very lucky that they are absolutely championing sustainability. So I can absolutely understand that this can facilitate a lot in terms of sustainability management when your top management is absolutely standing behind you and cheering you on and supporting you. Before I go into risk assessment, though, maybe a little bit of a background as to Hakro, because not many people know Hakro. Obviously, because we're a medium-sized business from southern Germany, so basically in the middle of nowhere, internationally speaking. But the second reason is that we are a brand for corporate fashion and workwear. So unless you yourself are working in workwear every single day and have outerwear branded with your brand name, corporate name, or embellished to become teamwear, you might probably not know Hakro very well. We are also operating in a B2B sector. So our customers are authorized retailers that we sell our clothing via these authorized retailers to end customers. And obviously end customers are companies as well, wishing to outfit their teams in teamwear. So it's a very, very complex market we're operating in. Yeah. I've also brought you a picture of us two CEOs, not just to show you their faces, but also because we're a family company, founded some good 50 years ago, and we're partly female-led. So the lady on the right, on the left, actually, is Carmen Kroll. She's our CEO and owner of the company, the daughter of the founder, which makes all the difference in the world as a sustainability manager as well. And her co-CEO is Tom Müller on the right, and they're leading our company together. And as a family company, it's really, for Hakro, it's all about values. So Caroline, if you could go to the next slide. I've brought you basically our brand logo, which includes our brand claim, which is in German, Held, seit 1969. So 1969 is when we were founded. And Held is probably best translated into English by some variations of the word keep. So our main values are really keeping together. So keeping together with everyone we work with throughout the supply chain, keeping alive very good partnerships also with our members of staff, with our customers. So really that sense of togetherness is very, very important for Hakro. On the more corporate management level, maybe keeping our word is essential for us and a really key value, which also covers a lot of trust and partnership as well, obviously. And then when we come to product and production, keeping up quality is absolutely essential in corporate fashion, because corporate fashion is really all about slow fashion, if you wish. It's not about fast fashion or throwaway fashion as we might know it from a B2C context as well. So high product quality, longevity, long-lasting products that can be washed very often. This is absolutely key in our business and core business model as well. So keeping up quality. And then obviously in terms of the environment, keeping the environment healthy, that as well. really considers all direct and indirect impacts that we have throughout our supply chain processes and beyond, even beyond the consumer phase. This is very important to us, and not only on site, on our own site at Hakro, but also throughout everything that we do. And then last but not least, keeping committed. This is our fifth sort of field of action when it comes to corporate giving and our engagement, our foundation, but also regional engagement for the society that's just around us, because that's also what we're responsible for, feel responsible for. So Hakro is a very purpose-driven business. Those values are really essential in everything we do. And we do have, as I said before, a kind of slow fashion business model. We don't have seasonal collections, but very basic program of outerwear. But we do still have a very traditionally linear business model. So it's not closed loop yet, or we're not recycling anything yet. I'll probably talk a little bit more about that later as well. But what is very, very central to Hakro is that we look at not just CSR, but CR or sustainability really in a holistic way of thinking. So we have an integrated sustainability management that really strives through everything that we do. So every single process is looked at from a sustainability point of view and with sustainability in mind, which is really spanning all supply chain processes. And Caroline, if you go to the next slide, I've mapped out our supply chain very, very roughly for you once. So every single picture is one rough step in our supply chain. It's actually even much more complex than this. This is a standard fashion supply chain or garment textile supply chain, if you wish. So it starts with raw material, for instance, cotton here on the cotton field, and it ends with everything that ends up in landfill once garments aren't worn anymore, and all the steps in between are actually 140 steps, as I learned recently. So this is really, really condensed, but perhaps it still shows that the textile supply chain as such is just very, very complex. And we at Hakro feel that we are responsible for every single process, not directly, but sometimes indirectly, because we indirectly impact the lives of so many people and the environment around them as well. So our first goal is something that our listeners, I think, have already mentioned as a key challenge, really, and it is for us as well, is to increase supply chain transparency, because the deeper we know our supply chain processes, the less direct our access sometimes gets. So that's a real challenge. But the more we learn about those processes, I think, the more we can identify our main impact points and our main levers for change and things we can do better. So this is actually what our risk analysis is all about. It allows us to identify the main impact points we have and to also prioritize these impacts and the topics and the risks and allocate resources respectively. Because we, in our sustainability strategy as well, we need to set goals and define measures because we can't tackle everything all at once. So our risk analysis or risk assessment really helps us in strategizing our approach to sustainability. Yeah, and this sounds all very well, but I get often asked, how do we actually do it? And on the next slide, I've brought you just a rough overview of our approach. So within the garment and footwear sector, there is this OECD due diligence guidance, which is a very helpful document for us. And it basically, it provides for us the basis and the structure for our risk assessment. And this guidance basically lists all the possible risks that are relevant within our sector. And if I may ask you to click once, Carolina. This is just for you guys. I won't tell you about every single point, but this is just an overview of the sources that we then use to evaluate those potential risks and that are listed in the OECD guidance. So, for instance, on a country level, we look at national laws in the respective producing countries where production sites are located in. We look at sector risks. We look at supplier-specific risks, which is obviously where audit reports come in. You guys mentioned before as well that audit reports are a super important source to really know what happens on factory level, on-site visits as well, obviously. And then it's also important to have a look at resource-specific risks, because, for instance, for us with cotton, there might be different risks than with polyester and so on. So we really want to have an inclusive look at all of these different sources. And this is also where the CSR risk check comes in, which we are using or have been using for the last year or so, because it allows us, it facilitates a lot of research. It allows us to really condense a lot of those sources that are out there, and especially with view to manpower and time, it really facilitates the process of getting as much input from different professional sources as possible into our risk analysis and aggregate all that data in one place. If you now ask, what does it actually look like? I've brought another slide to really give you an insight into our actual risk assessment and what it looks like. So you see 3 columns. On the very left, these are the left column are the OECD risk factors, the potential risks that the OECD guidance lists. Then on the very right is our risk evaluation according to all of those different sources that I've just shown you. And I've brought you an example from one risk with our production partner in Cambodia. So on the left-hand side and the left column, we have really entered everything we know about the certain risks. And then in yellow, the first line in yellow, you see the main risk that we're looking at right now. This one is low wages. And in the medium column, you see the prioritization that this risk has been given. So the risk of low wages, the main risk, has been given the prioritization of medium high, which is the average of all of the part risks, the average risk aggravating factors that are listed beyond. So all the white lines, I hope you can follow along. All of the white lines are basically risk aggravating factors, also listed by the OECD due diligence guidance, that contribute to this risk of low wages, that influence this risk. So, for instance, if you have multiple rates of minimum wages in a certain country, so this is now speaking on a national level, then obviously this is a complication for the term of low wages. And you can see here that this is actually a risk aggravating factor that has been rated as high, because in Cambodia we do not have one single fixed minimum wage. So it's really interesting to see how those different sources can show up different things. And what is also very interesting, I've marked that with red arrows, because that's been actually one of our biggest learnings within this whole risk assessment process, is that there can be gaps. No matter how many sources you look at, there can be some things that you simply can't answer and simply don't know about your own value chain, which is probably quite fair. And for us, it's been super helpful to really pinpoint what don't we know yet, but could potentially contribute to a risk factor. So for instance, the illiteracy rate from our the workers working in our production partners' facilities, we don't know anything yet about that. So it's been really interesting to think about that and to then go and say, okay, maybe we have to adjust our auditing process. Maybe this is an additional question we want to ask our production partners, but also auditors to have it verified externally. So yeah, and in general, the interdependence, I think, of the risk and risk factors is something that has been most exciting for us. Yeah, just to give you a brief insight, I think we'll discuss more about it later as well.
Thanks a lot, Anna. We're going to talk about chocolate now.
Yes, indeed. So the problem about going last is that everything that has to be said has been said, but this makes my job a bit easy. But before we go into what Tony's does or how we do things, I'd like to first begin with why. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So chocolate is not a need. It's a gift you give yourself. It's a gift you give others. It's a treat. And even though chocolate should be a treat for everyone, unfortunately, it's not a treat for everyone because there's a very bitter reality behind chocolate. So 60% of the world's cocoa comes from 2 countries in West Africa, Ghana and Ivory Coast. This cocoa is produced in about 2.5 million small farms. There are no big cocoa plantations, it's all smallholder farms. On these farms are around 1.56 million children engaged in child labor. And 95% of these children are working in hazardous child labor, so which means they're using machetes and pesticides, things that children should not be doing. And on top of this, there's an estimated 30,000 and at least 30,000 people, children and adults, who are victims of modern slavery. So they've been trafficked, they're in forced labor, unpaid labor. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So the root cause for all these issues in the cocoa sector, we say, is poverty. So on one hand, we have millions of smallholder cocoa farmers living in poverty. And on the other hand, you have billions of chocolate consumers like you and me. And then in the middle are a handful of companies that makes the chocolate. But the entire power of this value chain rests in this middle handful of chocolate companies that make the chocolate. So this is not an equal value chain at all, which is also why Tony's, we have an unequal chocolate bar, because if the cocoa value chain is unequally divided, why should our bar be? So this is how also Tony's came into being. It came, so in 2001, there was a Dutch investigative journalist, Teun van de Koken, who was looking into the problems in the cocoa sector and found that little had been done. And so to make the change, he founded the company. So Tony's, the international name for Teun, and Chocolonely for his lonely battle in the chocolate industry. And so this kind of makes the story of Tony's a little bit different to Hakro, perhaps, because we started out as an impact company. Like the impact and the problem we wanted to solve came before the chocolate. So Tony's was founded with as a small company with a very big mission. Together, we'll make 100% slave-free the Norman chocolate. Not just our chocolate, but all chocolate worldwide. And so how do we do this? So if you can go to the next slide, please. We have a roadmap that is embedded in Tony's. So this is not just a roadmap for the sustainability or the impact team. This is a roadmap that the entire company follows. And so we have 3 pillars, and some of these have actually already been reflected in some of the responses that came in the poll. So Tony's creates awareness. So only when consumers, retailers are aware of the problems in the sector, can they put pressure on chocolate companies to take responsibility? And then we lead by example. So of course you can talk the talk, but you need to walk the talk as well. We need to show that you can do business in a sustainable social way and still be profitable and still make money. So it's not one or the other. You can embed the way a sustainable way of doing business in the way you work. And finally, our unique selling proposition is that we do not want to be unique. We want other companies to follow the way we source cocoa. We want to drop the U. We want people to copy us. We want people to give us input, give us ideas on how to better our business model, if you must. If you go next, please. So we have a rights-based approach in the way we do business. So the risks identified in the cocoa sector cannot only be solved by interventions here and there, like a social investment or charity-based approach. It really needs a 2-pronged approach where companies change the way you do business. So to be more ethical in the way you source cocoa. So we have 5 sourcing principles. I'm not going to go into details, but we say all 5 sourcing principles need to be applied together. So no cherry picking, because there are interdependencies. By paying a higher price for cocoa, it could cause more deforestation because more farmers go into forest area to plant more cocoa. So all 5 sourcing principles do need to work together. And each of the 5 sourcing principles also shows that the different players in the supply chain have a responsibility to take. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Now, given the way the company was born, impact was always embedded in everything that we do. So which is why we say we're an impact company that makes chocolate and not the other way around. So working on the SDGs or working in the SDGs is something that's intrinsic to what we do. If you click once, so the top 6 are the core SDGs we identify that we work in. So based on our CSR risks, these are the SDGs we work in. But ultimately, SDG 17, so partnerships, because links back to our mission. Together, we make chocolate 100% slave-free. So if you can go to the next. So we have different key players that we need to work with to address these CSR risks, to achieve our mission. And ultimately, so each player has a role. So we do need partnerships with other big chocolate companies as well. Of course, farmers and cooperatives have their responsibility in making sure that there is no child labor in their farms. But this can only come if they are out of poverty. Governments have a huge role to play. And we've been talking a lot about mandatory human rights due diligence legislation. Absolutely. We need legislation to pull the responsibility towards us. Certification schemes are great. They do hold you accountable. There is a certain level of compliance, but then it's not enough. So we are fair trade certified, but we always say that we need to go above and beyond certification. So finally, I think we're going to go into some questions in the panel. But yes, it's not a lonely fight. It needs to be done with all the key players, and it needs to be done holistically. It can't just be an intervention to address some risks. The way you do business needs to be changed. And I think if you go to the next slide, it's just the petition, but we can go into the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Pavi. Chocolate's done. We ate it. Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing the presentation now because we want to go into discussion and we want you to see us. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. All right. So the first question is, first of all, let's see if we had questions in the chat. I couldn't see the chat because I was sharing my screen. Katinka, were there any questions that we should ask?
Yeah, we
first?
had in particular one question. Let's see if we can give an answer to that. How to manage risks and human rights due diligence in the conflict affected area where businesses is by default involved or contributing to ongoing systematic human rights violations. So that is one question. I don't know if one of you would like to reply to that question, or maybe one of us.
Well, I can give an example from a different company that we did an online seminar with a couple of weeks ago. It's a very small company. They have 18 employees and they're importing rare ores from China because they manufacture magnets, and this is what they need from China. And of course, China is a country where human rights are an issue. And they say, well, we are not going to change this because this is a highly political situation, but we're going to communicate about this. So this is one of the key points. Acknowledge the problem and say how you deal with it. And also, if you can't deal with it, say how you can't deal with this. But I think Anna wanted to say something.
Yeah, so I can just add to that. From our point of view at Hakro, I think for us, similar to what Pavi already said, partnership has always been key. And especially with our supply chain partners, I think it's very, very central to have long-lasting, trustful and open partnerships that you can actually invest in and actually trust in. So obviously that won't solve every single problem there is in China, for instance, but knowing those partners and collaborating with them and really fostering some sort of team spirit between them and us. Over the years, really, we have partners that we are partnering with in second generation now, so over 25 years. And this has really proven to be really, really successful in tackling risks and in confronting sustainability issues and problems that we have, to just make it our joint task. Yeah, that's been helpful to us, but obviously that's not a solution general to anything happening on a national level.
What do you think, Pavi? I mean, you're dealing with child labor. That's a fact.
Yes, it is a fact, and I mean, I think this particular question was specific about conflict areas, right? If I remember right.
Yeah.
Which so obviously I can't speak on that or to that, because both Ghana and Ivory Coast would not be considered conflict areas, but definitely extremely sensitive. It's a sensitive topic and the best way, I think, what's worked for us has kind of moved the move away from this very punitive approach. So I think before, with looking for child labor cases, it was very much about find it and stop working with that producer, and that's not a very sustainable, effective solution. So it really moved from a very to a more trust-based approach, where we said we look for child labor cases, and once we find it, we remediate it. So it's not just cutting off ties, and that's what the OECD guidelines as well says, right? It's not about, you do your due diligence, and if you do find risks, then you mitigate or remediate. So it's and that's really worked. And the governments, both of Ghana and Ivory Coast as well, have been quite cooperative, and which is why we say, all stakeholders need to be involved in identifying and solving these risks, both governments at producer and consumer countries. So in this case, that's also helped.
All right, thanks a lot. I think you can actually have a positive impact if you do business even in a conflict area. There's a startup company called Conflict Food, for example, and they work with smallholder producers in conflict areas, and they support an income. Yeah, I hope it's a very tricky and very complex question. So one of the questions that we had, and Pavi already answered this in her presentation, so I'm going to give this question to you, Anna. So what was the starting point of CSR and CSR risk management? Because I'm sure that when Hakro was founded, no one had Excel sheets.
No. No, they didn't, and they never heard even of the term sustainability. I think a good 50 years ago, no one used that term sustainability, and now it's literally everywhere, and it's even probably outused, some might say. So as a family company, we've from the very beginning have lived those values that I've shown you earlier, or tried to give you a brief overview of. So we've always been, our business model has always been about slow fashion and about very high quality garments, and about good partnerships, those three main things. And we have been auditing our production partners, at least on tier 1, for a couple of years, and gathered data from external experts on the social factors in our production partners companies. So we've had all of that data and all of that info, and about 2 years ago, we started really wondering about how can we sort of compile that data and press it into a more realistic system that will then also allow us to strategize a little bit more, and to have a really holistic structured and strategic manner of approaching sustainability management, to not just say, okay, let's do that project, sounds great, but to really say we're going to focus on this project first because this is where the main risks are, or where the risk is the highest, and which has much more pressure to act upon than other projects might have. So it's really been about 1.5 to 2 years ago that we've started that process to really start and dig deeper into our supply chains in order to reach our goal of full supply chain transparency, to really take our partners on board with that as well, and to really conglomerate all of those infos out there, be it country-specific risks, sector-specific risks, and then also partner-specific risks as well, and to adapt. This is actually a process we're working through right now, to adapt our auditing system as well, because we're feeling that it doesn't provide us with all the information that we actually need in order to evaluate those risks. So it's a fairly recent, other than this is why I find it so interesting, Pavi, to talk to you as well. It's a totally different approach, I think, but it's simply grown out of company history, and I hope it'll lead us to the same big end goal in the long run.
So would you say that even though sustainability and sustainable values, and even though they weren't, the terms weren't the ones that you used when the company was founded, even though you had all that for a lot of decades, you still need a sort of strategic approach to really tackle the problems?
Yeah, I think so, yes. And you especially need insight you need information, because unless you do have information about your especially deeper supply chain, you won't be able to really say what are the most pressing issues and how can I tackle them best. And I think information really is key. So structuring that with Excel sheets is very, very helpful for us, especially as a small company that has a limited, as any company does, a limited amount of resources and human resources as well. So really need to see where to focus, what to focus on first.
So now we have Excel sheets, and we have structure. And with you, Pavi, it's completely different, because I like that you say you're an impact company that produces chocolate. You could be an impact company that manufactures or sells anything else, as long as the impact would be there. But you chose chocolate, which we all benefit from right now. So on a daily basis, so how do you integrate this? Is everyone already on board, or does it still require some sort of structure?
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think everyone knows, and whether it's the marketing team or the sales team or the IT team, it's all about impact, right? So even with sales, it's the more chocolate you sell, the more impact you can make. And which is why the roadmap that I showed with the 3 pillars is not an impact or sustainability department roadmap. It is it's an all Tony's roadmap. And it kind of links back. So everything we do, like I said, even with sales, links back to our impact, because the more you sell, also the more beans you buy from farmers, which means the more impact you make. So it's all connected. So with our monthly, with our weekly meetings where we have sales updates, it's linked to impact updates, like what that means in terms of affecting the lives of farmers. So it's very much embedded, and I think for that, that just makes it a lot easier, because I think what we saw in the poll before as well, a lot of the challenges that companies face is to get everyone on the same page and everyone aligned. So it's definitely makes my job a lot easier when everyone's speaking the same impact language.
But when does your job get hard? What are the points where you say, oh, we everything? Because if I thought this in theory everything should run smoothly. So what are the biggest challenges that you face?
A good question, because we are still we started out as a small company, and now we're growing. So to kind of continue to cover our entire supply chain in the work that we do. Also, we know that and this links back to our mission, where we say together we'll make 100% slave-free the norm in chocolate, which means we really need everyone to be on the same page as us, not just inside Tony's, but also outside Tony's. And maybe that's where it can get a bit challenging, because not everyone has impact over profit kind of goal, or not everyone even looks at profit as a way to make more impact. Having said that, our CEO always says that, you know, he hates using the term social enterprises. He's like, why should there be social enterprises? All companies should be social, and the ones who are not should be asocial.
Yeah.
So I think also kind of getting that mindset, or, you know, getting other partners, or to realize that there is an ethical way of doing business. It's not always about profit. It is, you really need to, for systemic change to happen on the ground, systemic change needs to happen in the way you conduct yourself as a business.
Yeah.
If I might add onto that, I love how you speak about impact, Pavi, as well, because I think whether you're a social business, as you say, or not, every single company and every single customer that buys any product does have an impact on the entire supply chain that comes before that. And I think what we've lost, we as a human race, have lost over the last decades is really a feeling for what goes into making a product, and what hard work and how many hands have touched it, and how many resources go into making a product. So we all have that impact. Realizing that, and realizing the responsibility we have for that negative impact to turn it into a positive impact, I think that is absolutely key. And for us, one of the biggest challenges is at the moment is the question, hey, does it suffice to know and avoid risks, or do we actually have to actively push for positive change? So to go way beyond risk avoiding and risk mitigating, and go for pushing for positive change. So really into your direction, basically, which is obviously hard for an established company that has been founded with an entirely different background than yours, but it's definitely a question that every single company and every single customer as well, I think, should ask at the moment.
Absolutely. So it's from sustainability management to sustainable management, so to say. Yeah. We do have a question. I saw the question in the chat, but I would like to take the opportunity, because this is a European roundtable. And you will get the presentation, and our speakers agreed that they will answer questions after this. So we will get to definitely answer your question. You will get our contact details. But talking politics, Pavi, you said it a bunch of times. It can't be done by only you. You have to have supporters. You have to have allies. So we also talked about regulation. There are talks about regulation on EU level. What are your stance on that, Pavi?
Well, as Tony's, we absolutely support it. So we were definitely one of the key companies that kind of pushed for the child labor law in the Netherlands. We are quite vocal in asking for mandatory human rights due diligence legislation in the Netherlands, but also in the EU. And we also believe that legislation should apply to all businesses, regardless of size of company. It often comes up that legislations should be watered down, because like SMEs are often used as the reason for it, like because it's more difficult for smaller companies to comply. Not true at all. We believe that legislation is, regardless of the size of the company, it should be made mandatory. And also legislation, it should make companies pull responsibility towards themselves, right? And not just, again, rely on third parties. Like I said, again, with certifications, certification schemes are a great tool for companies to use, but you can't just kind of push all your responsibility away by just being certified. So we absolutely support it. And like you said earlier as well, like human rights and environment due diligence goes hand in hand. So it's not one or the other. And again, we think the OECD guidelines are quite a good foundation, where they lay out the 6 steps, which really kind of go from identifying to remediating and or mitigating. So I hope to see this come through soon.
What's Hagro's stance on EU regulation, Anna?
My spontaneous and intuitive answer is always yes, please, especially when we talk about a law on EU level compared to a law on national level, because I think it has a huge impact. When talking national laws, it might have a huge impact on market competition as well, a negative impact on market competition. So I'm absolutely pro EU level-wide solution, but I think one has to look at it in a little bit more differentiated way, because there are a lot of hiccups or problems or challenges that come with such a law. So it's really about how it's going to be drafted and how it's going to be executed. Because when we, for instance, think about liability, how are companies going to be made accountable for not complying? When we think about leverage, we have only 1 or 2 partners, but we do have 1 or 2 partners that we source about 1% from. So when Hakro comes and says, guys, let's do something differently, they all laugh at us because they say, guys, you just make 1%. There's so many big customers of ours who don't need that change, so we won't initiate it for you. So obviously that's a big challenge. And then I'm also a little bit afraid of that pressure on companies in general to comply. So because pressure, and you briefly mentioned that earlier as well, Pavi, pressure is seldomly a good thing, and punishing is seldomly a good thing in terms of progress, because it might motivate to comply, and it might motivate corruption, for instance, and deeper supply chain processes that we then can't really monitor. So I think it has a little bit, it has a lot of aspects to consider, and it's really all about how that law is going to be drafted and how it's going to be executed as well. And I recently read about an alternative suggestion which I absolutely liked on the first glance, which was to not regulate it via law, but to make human rights due diligence something reflected in duties, so that we can regulate via duties. For instance, more progressive countries have to pay less duties versus less progressive countries. For instance, China, we mentioned them earlier, or countries that are very difficult in human rights issues, they will have to pay additional duties. So I found that was a really interesting concept as well. But I'm neither a politician nor an expert on any of this, so I just think we have to look at it very, very closely and how it's going to be realized.
All right. Thanks a lot. We do have 3 minutes left. We do have 2 questions. I hope we can still get to them. Marike asks, how do you encounter differences in culture abroad, in that your vision is not directly understood by, for example, suppliers, and how do you overcome this? Both of you, 2 sentences.
I think for us, it's, no one wants child labor in their supply chain, whether it's the farmers who are producing the cocoa. They don't want their children to be working on farms. And likewise, consumers don't want to be eating chocolate that's been made by children, right? So in that sense, I think, it's really then about aligning on processes, or closing differences when it comes to processes, which comes with its own set of problems, but it's not impossible.
All right, Anna, what would you say?
I just jotted down 3 keywords which just sprang to mind. It's first for us, it's listening. So not talking fast, but listening fast, because we don't always have we only have our perspective. So it's very important to listen to the others. Tolerance, to really accept that someone else might have operate in a different circumstances and in a different context. Patience is something I'm struggling with very, very much, when it's very, very key. And to really just find a joint way, and to find a new approach together, and not adopt our approach or the one we're suggesting, but to really find a joint way of solving things, maybe.
All right. There's probably less than 60 seconds left. I would like to say a big thank you to all of you for joining us, especially to our speakers, that you gave us such great insights, that you gave confidence and trusted us, that you joined us, took time out of your busy schedule, and to be with us. It was very, very interesting for me too. I think, Katinka, you would agree. That it was also very interesting. I like what you said, Anna. It's about listening. It's about tolerance, and it's about patience, and it's also about doing things differently. I would say, and I think that we all learned that CSR risk management is a challenge, but it is doable for small and medium-sized companies as well. And it's not only CSR risk management; it will open everything up to a very core process approach of CSR, and this is what CSR is about. It's not about philanthropy. It's not about charity. It's about how you do business. Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks a lot for joining.
Thank you so much.